Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and still I rise. I rise today, Mr. Speaker, because there are some things that I must call to the attention of the Congress. Some news sources have indicated that somebody has said that we are in a crisis, a constitutional crisis. Mr. Speaker, I am that somebody. We are in a constitutional crisis. Mr. Speaker, we currently have the executive branch and the legislative branch in a standoff. A standoff because the President of the United States of America has refused to cooperate and has encouraged others to do so, refusing to allow subpoenas to be properly honored. Subpoenas properly issued, I might add. He has indicated that he, as president, will continue to do so in his words and his deeds. So, Mr. Speaker, I still rise, and I do so because there's a crisis. But I also do so because this obstruction of the president continues to this day. As I speak currently, the president is engaged in obstruction. This policy that he is implementing of not allowing persons to testify if he can prevent them from doing so, thwarting the investigation that's taking place, lawful investigations, I might add, this is a form of obstruction in and of itself. He continues to obstruct. And Mr. Speaker, I rise also because many have said that the soul of the country is at stake. Mr. Speaker, I would amend this. I would agree that the soul of the country is at risk. But I would also say that the soul of the Congress is at risk. The Congress of the United States of America must do its job, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the Congress of the United States of America, many of whom as members have indicated that the president has committed impeachable acts, but then go on to say that we should not impeach him. Mr. Speaker, we cannot say that a president has committed impeachable offenses and then not impeach. To do so would legitimize the president's actions. This Congress cannot allow this president to continue to do what he's doing, say that he ought to be impeached, and then step back from impeachment. That would say to the president that he can go out now and claim legitimacy. He can say that if I were a person guilty of impeachable offenses, the Congress would have impeached me. He will say that one party had enough votes to do it without the assistance of the other party. He will say to the country, I have done nothing wrong. And that would be wrong in toto for him to say such a thing, because he's done many things that are wrong. We as a Congress have a duty to bring before this body the President of the United States for impeachment purposes. This is the only place where such an action can take place. And the longer we delay, the greater the opportunity for the president to obfuscate, to confuse the country, to give people the impression that it's just a witch hunt. It is not a witch hunt. It is the proper thing that we should do pursuant to Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution of the United States of America, and our failure to do so will only allow us to give the president reason to go forward and say that he has been vindicated, when the truth is he has committed impeachable acts, starting with the firing of Mr. Comey, continuing through his efforts to deny the House of Representatives by and through its lawful investigative authorities to look into and bring witnesses before investigative bodies. Mr. Speaker, this is a sad day in the history of our country. It's a red letter day, but there is hope. And I assure you that this president will not go unchecked. There will be articles of impeachment brought before this body. I assure you there will be articles of impeachment. I pray that we can get this done through the proper committees. But if nobody else does it, each member of Congress is accorded the authority to come to the floor, the ability, and to bring articles of impeachment. I don't want to do it. This is not something that I came to Congress to do, but I love my country, and I will not watch and allow such a thing to happen before this country without my taking appropriate action. I will bring articles of impeachment if nobody else does. And finally this, I will say more about this evening. I should have 30 minutes of time. I will speak to a greater extent on the issues that I've called to your attention now. I yield back the balance of my time.